So I really want to, let's talk a little bit about this morning. You know, we can keep beating this dead horse about where we are. What I want to talk about and get some perspective, because Joe, you've been there, done this to a certain extent, not in this historic type of situation, but with the realities in the Republican leadership and the realities in the Democratic leadership, the realities in the Oval Office, and the realities with society. I mean, to be honest, Joe, they don't care. How are we going to stop the bleeding and turn this around?
You know, I've said this many times. You got to look at the big picture here. And the big picture is, how do you separate politics from financial management? You have a huge entity, the United States of America, that is spending almost $4 trillion at this point and not raising, 3/4 of it. And yet we have politics being interjected almost daily as to what people want. Now, on the congressional side, or just looking at the way things are working in Washington, there's a consensus among Republicans that we need to cut spending. On the Democrat side, there's a consensus among Democrats, and you'll hear it tonight from Obama, we need more revenue. How do you bring these together? This is a very difficult situation we're in. There's no question that the sequester is another gun, because now we're going to have these automatic cuts to defense, and we don't see the debt curve being bent down so that the long-term prospects are clearly unsustainability. That's a key word. The United States will not be sustainable in the next 10 years because interest rates are bound to go up. Right now, if you look at what we spent last year, approximately $200 billion on interest. That will clearly go, everybody agrees, somewhere around $500 billion at a minimum in 10 years if we don't bend this curve down.
So Joe, for example, and I've had this discussion already this morning. If you were a parent and this was happening with your child or your household, you would say, no, I'm taking the keys to the car, I'm taking the checkbook, and all of us in this house, we're done spending. All we're going to do is pay the light bill, we're going to cut back the cable bill, we're going to cut back the internet, we may not even be able to have those for a couple months, this is what we got to do. Okay, but in Washington, we don't hear people go, what we hear in Washington is, now hold it, that's too extreme, we have to look for the middle ground, we have to look for consensus. Hold it. We're in a situation of absolutes. And one absolute is we have got to stop what we've been doing, period, and stop the spending and cut the size of government operations, right?
How do you stop it, though, when you have a system where people want to get reelected and they're catering to their constituencies district by district, and districts have different needs, and besides each district, a congressman or a congresswoman has responsibility for overarching policies, defense and Social Security, whether or not those things impact the district directly. And you've got this now, confluence of money and self-interest and re-election, so that you don't see things clearly anymore. And this is a problem. How do you separate politics from financial management? And this is where we're doing a lousy job. And I don't know where to begin. I mean, right now, I've been saying for years, I spent 4 years in Congress, 22 years as a certified public accountant with one of the world's largest accounting firms. My firm was the first advocate for public fiscal responsibility and financial management accountability. Arthur Anderson, before that Enron thing hit, that was 20 years after I left. We've been saying this, but somehow the message is not reaching fertile ground. I mean, go back to
okay, so Joe, back up. Joe, back up. You're talking about, you said politicians, and that was my point. My point is then, I would say to my young daughter or son, I'm taking the car keys, and you're grounded. But, oh, you can't do that in government. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The Republican leadership and the Republican members of Congress can stand up during the State of the Union address and walk out. Let me tell you, you know, there's a group of guys that sat at tables in Philadelphia, and there was a death warrant on their heads. They put everything they had on the line. Mr. Morris, who lived catty-corner to the old State House, died a pauper. Started out one of the richest men in the colonies and died a pauper because he gave everything to the cause. What is it about us in modern America that our Republican leaders are not willing to pledge their lives, their treasures, and their sacred honor?
Well, let me say this. You're talking about shared sacrifice. You're talking about energizing the public to understand there is a crisis. I know we're not into World War II or some new world war that's coming, although we've got so many different things emerging around the world. Where's that leader to sell the American public on the idea that we have to build for the future? We have to leave for the next generation what we received. It's like the story of the old man planting a tree, and he was 90, and someone stopped by the road and said, "Oh man, why are you planting that tree?" He says, "Well, when I was born, there were many trees here. I want to be sure that there are more when I leave." So where is this attitude? Everybody wants to consume. You know, we're in this materialistic consumption binge. I mean, obviously, people should enjoy themselves. There's no question about that.
But I want to back up a little. Joe, back up a little bit. You said something. We're not like World War II. But, Joe, we are. When our biggest competitor and our #1 military threat to our country is holding $1.7 trillion of our debt, when our long-term liabilities could be as high as $170 or $200 trillion, when our economy for 6 years is going nowhere but down, when the job market doesn't exist, when there's no future ahead, are we not in the same level of threat to the future of this country that we were in World War II? Are we not at the point where Churchill said, "My friends, it's not a situation of doing our best. We must do what is necessary"? Are we not there?
I believe we are, but you don't hear this message coming from the leaders of both parties or from the president. Let's hope that these nonprofit groups like the Heritage Foundation, the Mercatus Center, all these other groups, Fix the Debt Now with Bill Frenzel, former colleague of mine, let's hope that they're able now to do what elected officials can't do, because elected officials have a conflict of interest, apparently. And you're right. Now, I'm waiting now for Jim DeMint to take the reins at the Heritage Foundation. I want to support him. I know he's a true conservative. I know what he believes in. I know he's got courage. And maybe they can start pushing the system to the point where we have reasonable people then speaking out of Washington the way you're speaking right now and the way I believe.